Spoiler alert everyone, I'm the dumb cosplayer that got uncomfortable all along. Hey everyone, Mr. AJ Cosplay here, and last time we reacted to the first 6 episodes of the hit anime of the winter 2022 season, My Dress Up Darling. This time we're going to react to episodes 7 through 11. And if you're wondering why we're not reacting to episode 12, well, the simple fact of the matter is, if we try to do that, this video is never going to come out. So we're just going to react to those episodes, and trust me, I think we're going to have enough to talk about with just that. So without further ado, let's get this going. Also ignore the fact that I'm not wearing foundation this time. It's not because I was lazy. I'm almost out of foundation, and this time maybe I'll look a little less green. Also, please don't be distracted by the fact that I am not wearing my contacts. I have no good excuse for that. I'm just an idiot that didn't realize until after he had already recorded this entire video. Would you believe me if I said that was intentional just to highlight how dumb I am?
それに今回はブラックリリーをするからスタジオを借りるつもりだし。スタジオ?
Okay, let's talk about cosplay studios. So yeah, it's actually fairly common for people to rent out rooms or entire studio spaces just for the sake of getting specific aesthetic cosplay photos. I've done that a few times. Some of the photos that are displayed here were shot in studios, and actually this does remind me of one time a couple years back. This was around the time me and my girlfriend first started dating. We attended an event where actually a group of people all got together and rented out an entire old styled house with a lot of rooms that have like specific furniture and stuff in it. It was really a lot of fun. I kind of want to go back and do something like that. But yeah, during instances like that, the more the merrier, because you can help split the cost. Normally specific studios are rented out by the hour. There have also been instances where sometimes you can maybe go to a standard place like maybe a bar or some kind of hall and see if you can rent out the space for an hour or two. Not every place is going to be like that, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to ask.
わかな。
はい。
前より良くなったな。
Okay, so this is actually a really good scene. One of the things we've seen in previous episodes is that Gojo is very self-conscious about falling behind and not being good enough. He hasn't really had a lot of time to work on his Hina dolls, and he was worried that that would show. But honestly, the opposite is happening because all of that extra experience he is getting making those cosplays and helping Kitagawa with her makeup did end up impacting his work for Hina dolls in a very positive way. But now that he's handling things in a more delicate fashion, like applying makeup to a softer human face, he's able to be a bit more relaxed when he's working on stuff like this. Whether it's cosplay, Hina dolls, or anything else, it doesn't hurt to expand your horizons a little bit as a creative, because trust me, almost any experience can turn into good experience if applied correctly.
ごめん、今起きた。カラコンつけてない。
Also, wait a minute, that wasn't her natural eye color? I feel cheated. Okay, it is actually interesting that most of this episode is just one chapter in the manga. Things that would just be one panel, like cutting to the anime that they're doing research on every now and then, that's just like one panel in the manga, whereas here, they're expanding upon it and giving it its own animated sequences. It really does feel like we are watching this show alongside the characters.
二人きりだし。
Oh my god, this girl is so in love, and like, I love it. I'm in love with watching this girl be in love.
目の形そのものが乾さんのと違う写真が時々ありますよね。あれってどうされてるんですか？
ああ、あれはテーピングよ。
テーピング？
Okay.
これよ。
So they did touch upon this a bit before in previous episodes, but they're actually going into the full-on explanation. So Inui was referring to this as cosplay tape. Inui is specifically talking about manipulating eye shape. And what you would do is, if you wear a wig cap underneath your wig, you would attach the tape to sort of the outline of the wig cap and pull on those features. So if you pull it up here, you can make your eyes a bit wider if they're more naturally squinted. If you pull them over here, you can make your eyes a bit sharper. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with eye tape. I've never used it personally. I do know that it's a common practice over in the Eastern cosplay sphere, and I actually didn't think it was that common over here in the West. But when I reached out to some people on Twitter, they were very quick to inform me that no, it actually is a lot more common than I gave it credit for. Specifically with manipulating facial features, it's used a lot in drag shows sometimes, and a lot of people with more rounded faces, if they want to cosplay, say, a Bishonen character that has more sharper angular features, they'll use it to like heighten cheekbones and sharpen those jawlines. Now, I wouldn't recommend putting tape on your face all the time for all of your cosplays for extended periods of time, because while you can get certain effects looking more natural, it's not perfect. Really putting any adhesive on your face for an extended period of time, whether it be glue or tape, isn't going to be good for your skin. I actually reached out to my girlfriend, Me, who was able to inform me about some of the ways that tape can be used to extenuate those facial features, but also educate me on some of the drawbacks to doing it. For one thing, your skin isn't always going to react the best to any type of adhesive that you put on it, whether it's glue or tape. It kind of like when you put band-aids on your skin for too long and then peel it off, your skin doesn't really have a lot of opportunities to breathe during that time, so extended use isn't going to be good for your skin. It could cause your skin to get irritated and acne to build up. Also, bear in mind, we are talking about pulling and stretching and manipulating aspects of your face. Your skin only has so much elasticity to it, so keeping your face in a position that it wasn't naturally meant to grow into initially isn't really going to be good for you. There can be other forms of damage that I'm just not thinking of at the time, but yeah, exercise caution when you're using face tape in that way. Another reason why I never used face tape at all is because the only times I've seen it used here in the West has been associated with manipulating eye shape to be a bit more Asian presenting, let's say. And there are a lot of Asian Americans that don't feel comfortable with that for reasons that I don't think I have to elaborate on. Then again, I do know a couple of Asian cosplayers that did grow up in America that don't see a problem with this at all. And understandable. I do wonder if the Eastern cosplay scene or those Western cosplayers, how they feel about non-Asian people using tape to be more Asian presenting for characters that do have more of a Asian aesthetic to them compared to others. If you are one of these cosplayers, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I don't think I'll be doing it anytime soon, especially since you can already manipulate your eye shape in more, what I would argue, subtle ways through stuff like eyeliner, eyeshadow, and other makeup accessories. You could argue you're getting the same effect, but one, makeup is just less damaging than using tape, and two, everybody uses eyeliner these days to sharpen and extenuate certain features. I don't think sharpening your eyes with eyeliner gets the same effect of stretching your eyes using tape.
ごめんなさい。この子緊張してて。お姉ちゃん誰にも見せないから。けど知らない人になんて返信すればいいのかわからなくて全部無視しちゃって。
Okay, that kind of explains it. So we already established early on in the show that Inui isn't really the type of cosplayer that cares about their social media presence or interacting with other cosplayers. They mostly just cosplay for themselves. So it is a little weird that somebody like that would go through the trouble of posting those pictures on social media and thus getting so popular in the first place. But here it's explained that their sister was the one that takes their pictures and gets so enamored by them that they're like, no, I have to share this with everybody. Everyone, I need to show off how adorable and cute my sister is, and then post it on the social media. And since she's so shy, she doesn't want to interact with anybody that's posting on the pictures or sending the messages. And then that kind of creates the disposition that she's this secluded, keeps to herself cosplayer, which is true, but again, there is kind of a disconnect between the personality and having the social media presence. So it's nice that the sister is the one that does that, and Inui just kind of lets her sister do it. You can tell she dots on her sister a lot and just loves the fact that her sister thinks that she's so great, so she just kind of lets her do whatever she wants, and that's really cute.
カメラはお父さんの一眼レフを借りてます。かっこいい。
Okay. Let's talk about cosplay photography, which is way outside my wheelhouse, something that I'm still developing to learn even to this day, but yeah, let's talk about it a little bit. So if you're a new cosplayer and you're trying to get a start and you're wondering what is the best way to take photos, do not think that you immediately need to buy a $600 to $800 camera. Even though Inui's sister here says that there's only so much you can do with a smartphone compared to a lensed camera, which is true. I think a lens camera does give you more information to work with, especially if you're getting like raw pictures, and there are stutter features and stuff like that that a lot of smartphones don't exactly have. However, I do think you can get pretty far with smartphones. At least I've been using my smartphone to not only record this video because I do not have a proper camera setup. Please subscribe to our Patreon so I can do that at some point in the future. But nowadays smartphones come with so many additional features, and there are so many apps that let you manipulate certain things that honestly you can get pretty far with just your phone. I've seen some cosplayers blow up strictly off of taking pictures with their phone. I hired a lot of photographers when I went to cons more frequently throughout the years. But when the pandemic hit and I still wanted to cosplay and post things to my social media, I very much needed to get used to shooting from home. So I set up my camera on a stand and I basically turned my room into sort of a home studio. And I would edit my photos, and I don't mean just like the fancy smoke and effects edits, sometimes more subtle things like blurring backgrounds or using Adobe Lightroom to manipulate lighting, or even to clean up your skin tone a little bit during those instances where your makeup might not cover everything or looks a little imbalanced. There is a lot you can do. I've literally seen people take a cosplay photo, edit it all on their phone within an hour, upload it, and it gets a bunch of hits. Like I said in the last video, cosplay smart, not hard. Work with what you have and you'd be surprised at how far you can go with it.
信じもしたかったの？ないです。したくならないです。
Oh yeah, the sister definitely wants to cosplay. More on that later.
魔法少女になりたかったの。
Oh, this is such a precious flashback. It's so well directed, so well shot. The use of lighting is incredible. It really invokes the emotion of what Inui was going through back then, how passionately she felt about this character to the point where she wanted to step into their shoes. And that shot right there, where she's standing in front of the mirror putting on her first cosplay, no, it doesn't look perfect, it's ill-fitted, but damn it, that's her first cosplay and her first step to walking on this journey of celebrating their appreciation for this character in this show. Oh, and it's actually really nice that Inui showing her appreciation for Gojo's cosplay, basically falling in love with it at first sight, sparks the same reason why he wants to make Hina dolls in the first place too. It's about hoping that your work catches the eye of somebody in such a way that they're just awestruck, thinking, wow, I love that. I want more of that. It also helps that this episode is like really, really damn gorgeous. Like, the show is already very, very good looking by most slice of life standards, but this episode in particular, more of this please, yes. Good moment.
どうですか、乾さん。
すごいわ。エンボス加工の生地を裏地に使ったのね。綺麗だわ。
ただこの生地、厚さがあってポーズを取るときに動きが出にくいかもしれません。
大丈夫よ。動きながら連写で撮ればなびいているように見せられるし、重みがある生地の方。なんかめっちゃかっこいい。私も分かってる。
That feeling when you realize you're the dumb one in the room. I think we've all had moments like that where you're maybe with a group of people and most, if not all of them, are all talking about one particular subject that you kind of know a little bit about, but it's clear that they're all experts on it and you have no idea how to jump into the conversation or even if you can contribute anything to it. So you just sit there quietly until the conversation eventually reaches a point where you have just no idea what they were talking about, and then you're just kind of left sitting there scared and worried about whether or not your presence is bringing everything down. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Okay, so obviously Inui's sister wanted a cosplay. That was clearly already foreshadowed before based on how she was framed in the previous episode. What I find interesting here is that why do I feel like my bra just unsnapped or something? I'm an idiot. But it's interesting that she's hesitant to cosplay specifically because she's worried that her sister would hate her for attempting to cosplay somebody that she can't really pull off. Or if she didn't do it well, then her sister wouldn't like her. I think at this point we know enough about Inui to determine that she wouldn't disavow or disown her sister over something like cosplay, but that mentality of how other people will perceive you, or that idea of people that you interact with or look up to in the cosplay sphere interacting with you if you decide to take a step into the cosplay world. Yes, that is a very real feeling. Even if the people and your friends will never do something like that, but it can be intimidating. And you want your first cosplay to be right, you know? So that way you can feel included with everything. It's also interesting that Inui seems to be going through a bit of a body issue crisis, where she's already kind of given up that she can't cosplay the character that she wants to because of how extenuated some of her features are compared to the character that she wants to do. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but you could kind of equate that to some body dysmorphia issues that arise in the cosplay community, where again, there are some people of certain body types that are just straight up intimidated to even try cosplay because given the way that they look and the way that their bodies are shaped, they already feel like they can't do certain characters justice and they might get bullied or disavowed for doing it anyway, so what's even the point? That's really, really sad when you sit and think about it. So even if we can rationalize that her fears aren't super founded in this specific instance, the feelings that she's going through are valid and synonymous with a lot of beginners go through. I went through it too.
この前たくさんのコスプレイヤーの方々がコスプレを楽しんでいるのを初めて見て、なりたいものに何にでもなれるのがコスプレの魅力だと思いました。
Aw, and it's kind of funny and sweet that Gojo is basically saying, hey, I went to this event and saw so many people of different shapes and sizes cosplaying a wide variety of characters, and it really did teach me that anyone can really cosplay. Cosplay is for everybody. So he kind of affirms not only that Inui wouldn't feel that way about her, but also that, hey, it doesn't really matter what you look like, you have just as much of a right to cosplay as anybody else. It also helps that this episode is probably one of the more technical of the entire show thus far, very much focusing on that idea of cosplaying at a budget, because since Inui's sister is a middle schooler, which is very hard to remember sometimes considering what the show does with her, but she obviously doesn't make a lot of money. So how can she put together what is relatively still a simple cosplay with a limited amount of money? I like some of the workarounds they come up with, like how they use Gojo's school uniform in place of the school uniform for the Bishonen character that she wants to do. I can't tell you how many times I've just used casual clothing in my cosplays. I mean, cosplay costs money, guys, so you want to always make sure you're getting the most out of the stuff that you get. One of the few great euphorias of being a cosplayer is that idea of appropriating other clothes and materials from one cosplay and putting them towards another. It's great. Speaking of, you can bet your butt that I'm going to wear this robe around the house. It's really comfy. I will say that this episode is probably doing the most for beginner cosplays out there. It gives you an idea of how you can do a lot with very little, shows ways that you can get creative while still sticking to the idea of accuracy, and the actual message of, hey, if you're passionate enough about something and it isn't hurting anybody else, then yeah, there's no reason why you shouldn't give it a shot. Cosplay at the end of the day has so many different avenues for creative expression that it really can be for anybody. I like that message. I think it's an important message that some people, even in the cosplay community, can be reminded about every now and then. What I'm not sure about, though, is the final third of this episode, basically how the cosplay is kind of put together, because it very much still seems to prioritize that idea of accuracy that we've seen so prevalently in the previous episodes. I don't know, but it does feel a little bit like that whole idea of accuracy equals respect is kind of clashing a bit with this idea of, oh, you can cosplay whoever you want regardless of your body type, which I feel like is what Gojo is saying here. I mentioned before that I'm not always super behind that mentality, even though I can understand why the show sort of leaned towards that, because that's clearly the mentality of the cosplayers that the writer of this manga spoke to, which is a predominant mindset in a lot of Japanese cosplay circles. It just feels a little bit tricky when you try to mesh that idea with a lot more of these like open, anybody can do what they want ideas. I think that's part of the reason why I want other cosplay opinions and worldviews presented in this show, and why sometimes it feels a little bit like a missed opportunity. If anything, you could definitely hit a wider audience and have a lot more interesting conversations about the social interactions of cosplay and what it means to be a good or bad cosplayer, or what it means to really show respect for a character.
私ももっと真珠みたいにスタイルが良ければ本当に真珠が羨ましいわ。
Hearing Inui talk about it this way, it kind of feels like she almost kind of regrets leaning into that worldview so much. And her sister says, but you look amazing in everything. And Inui counters, well, that's only because I cosplay characters that I know I can pull off. So they're kind of missing each other, whereas her sister, I think, truly believes that she would look good in any cosplay that she puts on because in her mind, her sister looks and presents herself amazingly. There is this sense of longing in her voice and in this shot. Again, if you're an East Asian cosplayer or even just someone who does adhere to this idea of accuracy above all else, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you ever find like there are any limitations with this worldview? Or how do you feel about people that kind of go against accuracy for the sake of more creative takes on cosplay? Maybe ones that don't perfectly emulate the original character to a T, but still clearly put a lot of love, passion, and effort into displaying themselves as said character.
相馬くんコスの準備してんの全然わかんなかった。いつしてたの？
ああ、それはですね、スタジオの下見に行った後、うちに来てもらって準備しました。もしもし、北川さん。
Pouty face Kitagawa is best Kitagawa.
何か冷たいもの飲みま。
サンキュー、飲む飲む。
Oh, no.
外やっばい、マジ汗だくだし。
ああ、真っ黒。
本当はファンで塗ってんの。体にも使えるやつ。
そんなことできるんですね。
そうだ、ごめんなんだけどシャワー借りていいかな。汗かきすぎてちょっとやばい。
はい。
Yep, cue the Anakin meme.
You were the chosen one!
Okay, obviously, if the end of the last video was any indication, I knew this was coming. I had a feeling this was coming based on the opening, and it's actually kind of interesting that a lot of people didn't really seem to catch this tan character in the opening and not kind of piece together, oh, wait, is Kitagawa going to cosplay that? Is she going to cosplay it like that? How is that going to work? As I mentioned before, I have the manga right here. My girlfriend bought all the volumes because they wanted to cosplay Kitagawa and wanted as many references to Kitagawa's design as possible. So I read it in preparation for doing these reactions, and literally the last chapter ends with this and makes it very clear that it is not a tan, it is foundation. In fact, it is foundation that is very, very similar to the foundation that I use, which is several shades darker from her natural skin tone. And to say I was upset about this was an understatement. I tweeted this as soon as the episode went out, and boy, was Twitter interesting for the next 2 days. And then I still had to write an episode review of this for Anime News Network. I wasn't really sure how to approach this because this is a very common practice in a lot of East Asian cosplay circles. Hell, Eastern in general cosplay circles. There are a couple of European cosplay circles, Russian cosplay circles, and various different Asian cosplay circles that are very open and comfortable with darkening your skin tone for the sake of cosplaying a character. I cannot speak to everybody on the planet. I can only speak to my personal discomfort with what goes on in the media I consume. So at the end of the day, I'm just going to focus strictly on how I feel about this scene, because this is the reason why you're all here, right? To have a black cosplayer explain why he's not comfortable with some people using incredibly darker foundations for the sake of cosplaying. Now, even though I didn't mention this in my initial posting, or even in my review, a lot of people just seem to think that I was upset about this because it's blackface. And yes, a lot of people do associate practices like this with the act of blackface. Many counter that by saying, oh, it's not blackface because blackface was always meant to be an intentionally racist caricature. Obviously, Kitagawa isn't trying to be racist here, and by extension, the writer isn't trying to be racist here, especially since they are darkening their skin for the sake of showing respect for a character. And I do agree with that to a point. Nothing about the scene or anything that I've read really insinuates that the writer or the characters are trying to intentionally do anything in a way that demeans other people of darker skin tones. And yes, it's obviously not a caricature, but I do think that a lot of people overlook the fact that it's not just the caricature and the actual physical portrayals of blackface that play a part in what made blackface so offensive. To me, the thing about like the whole black history of blackface and how it connects to things like this is the whole idea of treating skin tone like a costume. Because that's what it was, right? Back then, it was a lot of white people donning on makeup to play the roles of these black caricatures in media, whether it was television shows or plays and stuff like that. The idea was that, oh, we're not going to let a black person actually portray themselves or anything. We are instead going to portray them for them, and we are going to show our interpretation of how we think they are. And that's kind of the thing that bothers me. Now, you could argue, oh, but how is wearing your skin like a costume any different than, say, changing your eye color, or wearing a wig, or wearing fake boobs or something like that? It's all body modification at the end of the day, right? So why shouldn't skin tone be a similar avenue with that? And yes, if we did look at everything in a vacuum, on paper, that makes sense. Unfortunately, we can't look at this only on paper. We do have to kind of look at it in more of a cultural context, or even just in the context of socially how people are viewed in the cosplay community. Because unfortunately, at the end of the day, colorism is still a thing. So the idea of somebody who naturally doesn't have to deal with the everyday persecution of waking up with that skin tone every day, donning it for a few hours for the sake of some aesthetically pleasing cosplay, and then taking it off without having to deal with what it means to live with that skin tone, yeah, I'm going to be a little uncomfortable about that. Is it ignorant, and do I think it kind of perpetuates or turns a blind eye to a lot of the racial stigmatisms that go on in everyday life? Yeah. Now, I know some people are going to argue, oh, that's just your Western sensibilities. Just take the show for what it is and stop trying to force your opinions on it. To which I would respond, I'm not forcing anything. I'm literally just expressing how this makes me feel. In fact, there were a lot of people responding to this by saying that, oh, it's just gal or gyaru makeup. And that actually this should be celebrated because gyaru style and culture is seen as a rebellion to that fair skin mentality. And I've seen a couple of conflicting reports on this. There are a couple of different subsections of gyaru and gal culture, and not everybody who does it for the same reasons. There are some people who do it strictly in a fashion sense. There's some people that do it as a rebellion to that fair skin mentality. I don't know. It's kind of weird that people are using that as an argument because it kind of just further highlights the fact that there is a colorism issue. Like, why is dark skin seen as a form of rebellion in any place around the world? Kitagawa can be considered a gal, considering like her style and the way that she talks. But no, this is not gal makeup. This is specifically her putting on a darker foundation for the sake of cosplay. I mean, you could argue that she's just using foundation to shortcut what she would look like if she did take the effort to tan herself. But here's the thing. If she did tan herself, she would at least have to live with and walk around with that skin tone for a while. I don't know, there's a good chance that she could be perceived differently from people because of that. Foundations and spray tans, you can just wipe that stuff off, but a semi-permanent alteration to your skin or being born with a darker pigmentation compared to most people, that is something that you have to live with, and unfortunately, it's a lot harder for some people to live with that than others. I don't know, maybe a part of it comes down to the fact that a lot of anime fans unfortunately do kind of fetishize Japanese culture as like this pristine, isolated area that isn't touched by anything else that goes on in the world, when that couldn't be more further from the truth. Japanese people do know about things that go on outside in the world. There are various different groups that are still fighting for equal rights within Japanese culture itself, like LGBT groups, and yes, even darker skin groups. So pretending like Japan is this pure conservative thing that we are not allowed to comment on, I don't know, that feels a little bit limited and at worst backwards thinking to me. I think we can be critical of media as well as open to people's different reactions of media based on their own personal interpretations inferred by their own personal experiences. That's just kind of how appreciating art works. Like, obviously you can't get too far off base, but there are a fair amount of interpretations you can infer on a piece of work. And whether you like it or not, sometimes those interpretations are based on the way we view the world, and the way we view the world can be determined by how the world treats us, or at the very least, how the world views us. If anything, and yeah, this might actually surprise some people, I don't think we should use the term blackface during these discussions. Not because I don't think it has any connection to blackface at all, but because more and more people are using the term blackface as sort of a smokescreen, or sort of like this loud buzzword that kind of distracts from the overall conversation. When I posted my episode review, I was very careful not even to say the word blackface, and within 3 days, the forums for that show got over 100 comments. I wish my other reviews got that many comments, but I digress, and a lot of them were of people saying that, oh, he was offended because he thought this was blackface. I don't know, I feel like there should be a subsection word for this type of cosplay portrayal, or this type of costume portrayal, where you use a skin color or a race in place of a costume. I don't know, I would love if we can just land on a term like that, because if we can distinguish the specific thing that we find insulting about having our skin color be used as a costume like this, then I think it would be easier to have these conversations. Or at the very least, it might make some conversations feel less loud and cluttered, because that way not everybody is screaming blackface and instead focusing on the specifics of what aspects of that practice's history specifically fall back and inform the actions of today. I would like this to be an open conversation, because at the end of the day, I'm just one dumb cosplayer on the internet sharing how he feels. You can choose to continue watching this video. You could have stopped before you even got to this point. You could downvote and comment something annoying or frustrating, or I don't know, call me white, because clearly I am. But yeah, I don't know why people should get uncomfortable with me expressing discomfort about one particular aspect of a show, saying that I should keep like my opinion out of it or keep my personal experiences out of it, when in reality, a majority of the reason why I like this show is because I'm able to inform so many of my own personal experiences on it. Just because I ended up coming across an instance where my personal experiences reflected something negative that I don't like about the show, I don't think has any greater or less value than the instances where I praised the show. Now, I know to some people the very idea of me taking other people's feelings into consideration is a slippery slope. It's like, oh, if you have to be so conscious about other people's feelings when it comes to appreciating art or showing off your love for a character in cosplay, where does it end, you know? Why should we limit ourselves based on what other people say or think? Shouldn't we be allowed to do what we want? Isn't that part of the whole cosplay is freedom, or freedom of speech mentality? And you know what? You're absolutely right. I can understand the desire to not limit yourself based on what other people say. I have two counters to that though. The first one is, that's already happening anyway. I have unfortunately been very lucky as someone with not as huge of a cosplay social media presence compared to others. So I very much receive a fraction of the hate and discomfort that a lot of my associates and friends share. It is not easy living as a dark-skinned cosplayer, just like how it's not easy living as a dark-skinned person in this world. The fact that I got inundated with comments from people talking down to me for just straight up saying without any context that this makes me feel uncomfortable, doesn't that kind of feel like people are impending on my ability to express myself by kind of shaming me for doing that? But I implore everybody to pause this video, go online, and look at some of the most popular black cosplay posts on the internet, like the ones with the most traction, the most likes, and read through the comments, or listen to the stories of other cosplayers that have to deal with constant backlash from other people for just existing, not even having a strong opinion on anything, just presenting themselves in a way that they feel comfortable in, or trying to show their respect for a character as best they can, and yet getting slammed and ashamed for it. It's funny that Inoue's sister seems very plugged into social media. I wonder if she's seen any of those hate-filled comments towards people other than her sister. Or maybe her sister does get some comments because of her petite figure. That's possible. And the thing is, it doesn't even have to always be racism. It could be fat phobia, homophobia, misogyny. Let's not pretend that there aren't a lot of really ignorant and backwards thinking people in the cosplay community, in the anime community, etc., that make it very hard for certain groups of people to just exist. So to all of you arguing this slippery slope argument, I ask you, can you please, if you're showing that same amount of energy, for these people that are so intimidated to take that first step into cosplay because of the horror stories that they hear. Or if they do take that first step, I hope you'll be there by their side to uplift and support them when these people come out. If anything, this whole argument about whether what Kitagawa did was blackface or not, isn't even the first conversation we should be having. The main conversation we should be having is, I wonder why so many cosplayers feel uncomfortable about this. And after they tell you, oh, it's because my experiences led me to feel uncomfortable about this particular thing, maybe we should start figuring out why those experiences are so bad in the first place. Will we ever get a point where darkening your skin color in this way is acceptable? To quote John Mulaney, a lot of people are going to have to get cool about a lot of things really quickly. Obviously, there are some things that aren't worth getting uncomfortable about, but I think there is enough reason here for people to just say, hey, I would like it if we got more away from stuff like this because it's not really that creative or constructive, or at the very least, it highlights all of these other issues that never get addressed during these conversations. I would like us to live in a society where we can all just kind of stand up together. I have no control over what people like Kitagawa or other Eastern cosplayers do. I can be upset and disappointed by it. I can distance myself from it. I can even sit down and maybe talk to them about that if people are willing to listen. Maybe the opinions of schmucks like me don't matter. I get it. I just find it very, very ironic that this is literally what the episode this takes place in is about. When we get to the end of the episode and they're literally on their way to do the cosplay, Gojo stops her and says, hey, I don't think I can shoot this cosplay with you because the cosplay shows so much skin and is a little intense for someone like him. He doesn't feel comfortable doing that. And at that moment, Kitagawa needed to make a choice. What mattered more to her, doing the cosplay on her own or cosplaying and doing things with Gojo? At the end of the day, Kitagawa chose Gojo over cosplay. We know how important cosplay is to this girl, and the fact that she's basically saying cosplaying isn't worth it if you're not there, that's a very big step in their relationship too. This is pretty much the definitive turning point, I would argue, when this manga becomes less about the cosplay and more about pursuing the romance between these two. It's very much like cosplay is an important aspect of it and the technical stuff is still there, but it's more about using it as a vehicle to advance the relationship between these two people, both as relationship partners and as creatives, which I think is interesting and I think is a great message, and it's very well written, and god damn it, why did this have to be in this episode? Replace being uncomfortable with the sexiness of a cosplay with anything, really, and the message I think still works here. I just find it funny that more people aren't talking about that message of the episode, especially since if we're talking about respecting a character and treating these characters like they're actual people, I do genuinely feel like if I sat down with Kitagawa and explained this to her, she would completely understand it. I don't know, call it a hunch, but that's my interpretation of the character. You can agree or disagree, but that's just kind of how it goes. I will say this though, if you are somebody that is comfortable with viewing or doing cosplays where the person in question will put on very, very dark foundation to emulate a tan or dark-skinned character, let me ask you this. What would it be like if you had to walk around for a whole year where you lived with that skin tone? Would your life be any different from how it is normally? Just think about that for a second and then come back to the people that express that discomfort over things like this. And if you are someone who is dark-skinned, who doesn't have a problem with this, I'm very curious to know your life experiences. Or at the very least, I want to try to understand as many things and as many people as possible. It'll destroy me at the end probably, but hey, I think it's an important enough thing that is worth pursuing, if at all possible, even if not done perfectly. And of course, we will end the episode on probably one of the most wholesomely framed, do you want to see my nudes question that I think I've ever seen in any media ever. Bravo.
俺、漫画喫茶初めてです。
そうなんだ。超おすすめだよ。
I really want to go to a manga cafe someday. There are some opening up here in the West, but they're few and far between. I don't know one that's really near me at all. I just want to go to a manga cafe and like stay there for like a full day. That sounds like a great time.
いや、リズキュン好きだけど、ハーフツインって可愛すぎて。可愛い子限定って感じだし、キャラじゃないかなってさ。
北川さんなら似合うと思いますけど。
Aw. See, this is what I'm talking about. Kitagawa doesn't know she can do that cosplay because she feels like the specific hairstyle of the character wouldn't suit her. And Gojo's kind of looking at her like, you crazy? I think you'd look good in that. Okay, not nearly as confident, or it shows that she values Gojo's opinion more than her own hesitancy about cosplay. That's how much she trusts him. And that's why they make a good pair. And god damn it, just kiss already, damn it.
北川さん、
Oh.
俺の上に乗ってください。
腰下ろすよ。いい？
Okay,
どうぞ。
maybe not now.
超いいんだけど。
Ah.
はい。
最
角度でこんなに変わるんですね。
So this is what it's like when the monkey paw curls. Another thing I really like about this episode, and it's actually funny because I was originally only going to react up to episode 10 because I feel like that was going to be the bulk of where the conversations in this episode was going to go. But I wanted to, at the very least, include my reaction to episode 11 because of what Kitagawa and Gojo are saying here. First off, I love the fact that Gojo took what was ostensibly like a chibi manga and based off of his own research and interpretation, extrapolated a whole design based off of that. Because like he says, oh, there are some angles where you can't really see other aspects of the cosplay. The design is overall simple, so there aren't really a lot of details to go off of. So he did research into succubi and other similar media and basically came up with his own design that he thinks matches the look and feel of the character, which is great. It actually kind of reminds me of when I reached out to my friend. So, okay, little story time. One cosplay that people really liked that I did was Arjuna from Fate Grand Order. I did his third ascension after being, no joke, bullied by my friends for 2 years to do the cosplay. But then I wanted to do his second ascension. Unfortunately, there weren't really a lot of places selling it. So I commissioned pretty much that same friend that bullied me. Hey, can you make this cosplay for me? This is the same friend who gave me the measurement tips in the last video. She said, sure. And then she came to a realization, oh, so I was thinking of adding all of this really nice embroidery to it. Like, how extra do you want me to be? And I'm like, be as extra as you want. And there's this really nice detailed embroidery to it. Like, it wasn't exactly like the original. If anything, it was more than the original. It very much felt like, oh, if this was translated into real life, I could see it having these details and features to it. I think stuff like that is super impressive and amazing and needs to be celebrated more, if I'm being completely honest. But it's understandable why Gojo would be a bit hesitant to tell Kitagawa this, because it's basically like, hey, it's not exactly accurate, and I know that you're really big on accuracy. And then Kitagawa, of all people, basically says, your own interpretation of cosplay is valid. Your creativity is valid. Where was this message earlier on in the show? Like, it's a little bit weird that this is coming from Kitagawa, admittedly, but maybe that was also a recognition of Gojo's interpretation or Gojo's agency towards this craft is just as important as any feelings of accuracy. But the thing is, she does also go into detail about it a bit before regarding, oh, you know, like sometimes there are different versions of characters. Sometimes they might differ from the manga when they go into an anime, and some people only cosplay the anime versions and they're just as valid. I feel like this point should have been brought up way earlier in the show, and I wish they expanded upon it more, but this I like. Not only do I feel a bit more validated and seen regarding my viewpoints on cosplay, but that just feels like a natural, healthy progression of viewpoints from a relationship standpoint and from a cosplay standpoint. I personally think if you stuck strictly to this idea of accuracy through and through, you would continue to hit some of those walls that I think the show sort of hit before with Inui's younger sister. If this is going to be the last episode that we react to, I want to end it on this high note. At the end of the day, cosplay can be for everybody. The space might not always make it feel that way, but I think that's how it should be. And I'm to this day still doing my best to share and celebrate cosplayers of all different types, skin tones, and ethnicities. Because the amount of creativity and the amount of effort that goes into showing off that love for a character cannot be understated. That love and passion that Gojo and Kitagawa have for their craft and for each other is something that should be watched and appreciated. I understand there are some things that hold this show back for some people, like the fan service and some of those questionable scenes that only really speak to or validate a specific subset of cosplayers. But I still love this show. I still want to recommend it to other people. I still love these characters. But I also like this show for the conversation it sparks, for the emotions that it welled up inside me, and for the memories that it reignited. Cosplaying can be hard. It can sometimes feel like a chore. It takes a lot of your time and money. It's not a hobby that you can always dedicate 100% of your time to unless it's your career. And that's not a very easy thing for people to do. I think as long as you don't lose that spark, as long as you don't lose that passion for why you are cosplaying, what you are doing this for, that sense of excitement and joy that you feel when you don on those clothes and that wig and those contacts, then I think you'll be okay. To any cosplayers that are watching this video, I look forward to seeing the new work that you put out. And to any new people that might be considering cosplay, good luck. I can't wait to see your stuff get posted wherever it may be. Well, that was a lot to go through. Yeah, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of interesting comments down below, but please, I'm very curious to hear everyone's thoughts on some of the more complicated subject matter that was covered in this video. All I ask is that you be respectful and please keep an open mind. This video series was honestly a lot of fun, and I would like to do more videos like this. What other things would you like us to react to? It could be anime-related news, compilations, or heck, maybe the first couple of episodes of shows coming out in the new anime season. Special thanks once again to Mr. Nice Guy for editing this video and giving it a unique style, as well as to Abi for coming up with this idea in the first place and pushing me to make it the best that it can be. Special shout out to our patrons for always supporting us, including Regan Senpai, Jose Argamedo, Andrew Wade Pittman, Marissa Lenti, Ahoba, Xavier Gordon, Queen Era 2, Ryan Rodriguez, JR Pictures, Tristan Gallant, and Unknown Secret 1000. This has been the Cartoon Cipher, and until next time.